We are going to go straight into the next session, Isak, if that is okay with everyone. We have an expert panel of 3 different editors, but I will start by introducing our colleague, Ms. Angie Kapelianis, also from SANEF. She is at the SABC. She's news input head, and she has a wealth of experience of having covered several elections in South Africa. So if I may, Angie Kapelianis, over to you. She'll talk us through broadcasting and her experience and expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amina. I hope nobody minds. Can I go off video? Or do you want me on video? I'm a radio journalist editor, so I really don't mind, but I don't want you to get distracted by what you see to what I have to speak to. So
we want you to stay on video, my lady.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Apologies from our SABC News head and editor-in-chief, Patiswa Magupeni, who was invited to do this presentation. She had another appointment that she couldn't cancel and asked me to step in. And I want to say first to SANEF, of which I'm a council member, thank you so much for hosting and preparing for these election webinars virtually. I think they're vitally important. And given that we have an official election date of the 27th of October, but a constitutional court case coming up, different options by the political parties, proposals, it's timely that we start with these election briefings right now to get our heads around a lot of things. And we're generally very busy with a lot of breaking news. I also want to say a huge thank you to Mr. Shiburi from the IEC. The way in which he explained the IEC and the key issues, the topical issues, and also to Isak. There are a lot of complicated, stodgy things that happen. And we as journalists and reporters need to be able to summarize and crystallize them in order to communicate them effectively. And Isak, I agree with you, there are tons of story ideas hidden everywhere, whether it was Mr. Shiburi's presentation or even in the timelines that you said. And sometimes it's not just in the timelines, it's what's behind the timelines or what's behind the news release. But let me cut to the chase and focus on the brief, a reporter's quick guide to covering local elections. And I think this will also illustrate what Mr. Shiburi said and did, and Isak too. Number 1, know your stuff. Know it inside and out. What are elections all about? What's the point and purpose of elections? What's the difference between national and provincial elections versus local government or municipal elections? Who's involved? Who do you need to tap into, to talk to, and to reflect? What's different about these elections compared to the last one, the previous ones, all the others? So we've had local government elections since 1995, and the elections were split over 2 years. The IEC might not officially count those, but the first local government elections I did was in 1995 and in 1996, and it also related to KwaZulu-Natal. So go back in history, know what the key elements of each election were. What was the climate? What were the important points? Key to these elections, like all elections, what are the issues? What's at stake? My list of questions could and does go on, and that's the point. Question absolutely everything and everyone to find the answers, to find the facts, to better understand, to really understand what's going on. And most importantly, why is something happening? How is it happening? How is it manifesting? And what does all of that mean? Like Isak has done his homework, like Mr. Shiburi did his homework, do your homework, prep. Read everything that you need to read. From the seemingly most boring and dry laws and regulations, they are important. Read with meaning, read with understanding, and develop the ability, as I said earlier, to be able to summarize, to crystallize the essence of what you're reading and what's important. And in doing your homework, your prep, your reading, this is, I think, Isak's third P. Know the area, the places, know the area that you're covering. The district municipalities, and if you live in a province or a city that has a metro. The wards know all the issues that are at stake. What's working, what's not working, why it's not working, what's being done about it, what's the background, what's the context, how did this happen, how has it been allowed to go on for so long, how can it be fixed, how can it be prevented and avoided. And in doing your research, don't dismiss literature. And here I'm talking about novels and poetry, no matter what the language, whether it's English or Sotho or Zulu or Tswana. This may seem completely inappropriate for a reporter's guide, quick guide to covering local elections, but it can add to your knowledge and your understanding of a place and a people, as well as to the texture and flavor of your reporting and journalism. And I want to illustrate this point. I'm reminded of a little story and an invaluable tip from the 2005 Pulitzer Prize winner for international reporting, Dele Olojede from Nigeria. And he shared this tip with us at one of Paula Frey's Neiman Narrative Journalism conferences with us in Joburg. And that was many, many years ago, and I still remember that to this day. So give or take, it was 95, latest 96, you can do the maths. Olojede won the Pulitzer for his series on the 10th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. Among all the books that he read in preparing to cover that story, he took one thin novel with him to Rwanda, and it had absolutely nothing to do with Rwanda, his research or his investigation. The thin novel was the classic, The Old Man and the Sea, for which the American author Ernest Hemingway himself had won a Pulitzer Prize over half a century earlier. And the point of this little story is that Olojede believed that Hemingway's writing, his writing style, his choice of crisp words, short sentences, all of that and more, helped him and shaped his writing to tell the Rwandan series, the Rwandan genocide 10 years later. So don't dismiss the novels and poetry in improving your writing style. It may also just help you win an award, but that's a by the way. Right at the beginning of this election webinar, SANEF chairpersons Boone Galwa referred briefly to the stories hidden in the numbers. And this is my next point. Look at the numbers, look for the numbers. Go to Stats SA, WASI Map, the Auditor General's Municipal reports, the IEC website, just to name a few. What are the most important numbers? What do they say? What do they mean? Where's the story or the stories in those numbers? How do you tell that story without getting bogged down by numbers? Long numbers with lots of zeros, millions and billions, or numbers and percentages with commas. Round it off unless that comma is the difference between losing and winning. Ward 7, for example, means absolutely nothing to me. I don't know where Ward 7 is. I don't know that the person in Lusikisiki, the person in Pofada, the person in J Bay, that anybody knows where Ward 7 is. So we've got to drill it down to that which people can get and understand very quickly. I understand, I for example, don't know, haven't checked, can't remember what my ward number is. And yes, that information hidden in that ward is important, but I know where I live. I know the suburb in which I live. I know the surrounding suburbs. I know the city in which I live, or the town, or the dorpie, or the village. Help people to understand working in your specific medium. Here I'm also going to be broadcast specific. The generally fleeting mediums of radio, and to a lesser extent TV, which can use graphics, generally don't like numbers. They don't like numbers on the tongue, and they don't like numbers on the ear. Radio and TV generally are not number-friendly mediums. Let me be radio specific. A radio reporter or journalist really has one chance to get it right, to be clearly understood. A listener generally can't pause or rewind live radio, for example, while they're driving. And the last thing you want them to do is to say, what was that? Did I hear right? Did I get it right? Did they make a mistake? So make it easy for your audience to understand the information that you're working with. And I also don't mean dumb it down. People are not stupid. They can be uneducated and intelligent. They're not stupid. So don't dumb it down. Just make it easy, accessible, easy to understand. Work towards the strengths of your medium, be it radio, TV, print, photography, online, social media. And I know that, I think there was an idea that I just talked to broadcasting. The SABC is no longer just doing broadcasting. We have radio, TV, the traditional mediums, but we've also gone online. We've got our SABC News website, the apps. We're on social media. So we're also having to think about writing and what gets published, whether it's on a tweet or it lives for a longer time on the website. In doing your homework and prepping, getting ready, I want to also talk about just 2 other not so obvious skills that a reporter, journalist, editors need to hone. And these 2 can separate reporters and journalists from the rest. The one relates to observation skills. It's not just in the reading. What do you see every day? What do you see when you get to the traffic lights, the robots? When you turn into Hillbrow and you see the Rea Vaya bus station that has been, well, I don't know if it's a bus station, this concrete thing in the middle of the road that has been sitting there for years and years and years, an incomplete project. Where did that money go? Why is it not finished? We're talking about extending the Gautrain, for example, in Johannesburg, but Rea Vaya just ended in the middle of nowhere at Hillbrow. How are these public transport systems going to connect? Are there a competency of local government? If not, maybe it's a story for another day. But use your observation skills. What do you see? What's not right? What's incomplete? What stands out? What's defining? And then if you had to describe that to someone, how would you do it? In as few words as possible, but at the same time without being cryptic, adding to greater confusion. How would you paint the picture? Would you describe and paint everything and leave nothing to your audience's imagination? Or would you describe that which is salient, defining, different, and that which stands out? Because that's going to make your journalism, even on local elections, stand out. The second not so obvious skill that I think we as journalists and editors need to sharpen are our listening skills. For me, they're key as a journalist. How you listen, how closely you listen, how carefully you listen. What is the person saying? Go beyond that. What are they really saying? What do they mean? And then even more importantly, what are they not saying? What are they leaving out? Why are they leaving that out? What are they hinting at? From that, you can find your story. You can find your characters. You can find your quotable quotes, your up sounds, your sound bites. That then begins to illustrate your story and to enhance your story, including on local government and local elections. Okay, so at this point, you're probably asking, what is she going on about? A lot of what she said has nothing to do with the reporter's quick guide to covering local elections. And you're absolutely right. If you want to be boring, if you want to be bland, and if you want to blend into the crowd. But if you want to stand out, and if you want to have your stories, in this case, your local government, your local election stories, stand out, be noticed and remembered many years down the line, okay? It's about how you approach your stories, the people that you interview, how you allow them to express themselves in their own way and in their own words. I don't want to know about your opinion. I want to know about their opinion. I want to know about how they feel, their joys, their frustrations, their challenges. So this, I think, begins to help us to tell our stories differently. And it's not specific to local government or local government elections. Somebody used the word earlier about the fundamentals. It's always about going back to basics. I think now is a good time. The other just quick points that I want to talk about before I end. I would ask all our reporters and journalists and editors, what do you want to know? You must be curious. You must have question marks, but at the same time, you want to get the answers. And more than that, something we don't really talk about is, do you care? Do you really care what your city looks like? Do you care what the dorpie looks like? Do you care who's getting services and who's not? People are paying for those services. Yes, not everyone's paying, and there's this pool of money, but where is that money going? Why are our municipalities in disrepair, dysfunctional? They have no money. What happened? How is that right? How can that continue? And maybe going beyond, a little bit beyond the care, and I'm cautious to use this word, do you rage? How much do you rage? And I'm worried about using that word. You must rage inside, and it must come out in your storytelling. But it's not, it's the difference between, I suppose, being an advocate, an activist, and a politician, a journalist. Somewhere find the fine line. But deep down, there must be this flame in you that says this is not right, something is wrong. Not in our name. So to end off, you need to understand what district councils are, municipal councils, metros, what the municipalities are responsible for. They're responsible for bylaws, rates and taxes, roads, refuse collection, sanitation, electricity, stormwater management, town planning, the development of villages, dorpies, and cities. And in between all of that lie the people's stories. The people who are residents. They are, not all of them citizens, the majority are. Not all of them are eligible voters. But how are they affected? What is their experience? How are you conveying that? And even in the difficult stories to tell, the story about numbers, the story about municipal finances, which will come up in another SANEF webinar later. All of that is important. But it's how you approach your story. It's how you approach people. But you've got to get ready for that. And that starts often quietly behind the scenes. And then one thing we generally don't talk about, it's about the creation of memories. And maybe this is just very close to my heart because I've lived and worked in radio for 30 plus years, a little bit of TV, but mainly radio. It's about the creation of memory. And there's no formula for that. But often quietly, I would say to myself, well, I do the journalism, I collect the facts, I do the research, I look for the sound bites. I ask myself quietly, how will I remember that person? What stands out about them? How would I describe their face? Whether it was Omatuku Sempela in 1995, and she had creases in her desert sand colored face, for example. What do I remember? What about this event do I remember? How do I capture the essence of that to convey? Because I think it's got to go beyond down the line reporting. And maybe I've just paid more attention to that in my reporting because I've worked in such a fleeting medium called radio. But you can do it in any medium that you work on. When you send out a tweet, is it just another tweet adding to the noise and the traffic? Or is somebody going to say, and go back to it and want to share it? And why are they sharing it? And I'm using probably an even more fleeting medium like social media where there is so much going on. So it is about the creation of memories. How do you create a memory? How do your stories live beyond the now where I can't even remember what happened yesterday? I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.